A millionaire came home earlier than expected, and what he saw left him frozen in shock. "My God, what is that woman doing with my son?" Richard Blackwood's voice thundered through the mansion as he stormed into the living room. There on the floor, his maid Kesha was guiding his 8-year-old autistic son, Tommy, through strange exercises. Richard's chest tightened with anger. She wasn't cleaning. She was sitting cross-legged on the carpet, helping the boy move his arms and legs with unusual patience. "Tommy was having a meltdown, sir," Kesha explained softly, standing up and brushing her hands against her uniform. "He hurt himself trying to climb the stairs. I just calmed him with some breathing techniques." Richard blinked. For the first time in months, Tommy wasn't crying or banging his head against the wall. The boy was smiling faintly, his breathing steady, his movements more controlled. "Breathing techniques?" Richard scoffed. "You're a cleaner, not a therapist. You weren't hired to experiment on my son." Kesha lowered her eyes, but Richard noticed something unsettling, a quiet strength in her gaze, as if she knew something he didn't. "Of course, sir. I'm sorry. It won't happen again." "It better not," Richard snapped, yanking Tommy's hand harder than necessary. "Your job is to clean, not play doctor." What Richard Blackwood didn't realize was that he had just insulted a woman with a master's degree in occupational therapy and over 15 years of experience with autistic children. Kesha hadn't always been a maid. 2 years earlier, she'd run a respected therapy clinic. But false lawsuits, driven by jealous white competitors, had destroyed her career and forced her into cleaning jobs just to survive. Later that day, as she vacuumed the carpet, Kesha watched Richard berate Tommy for not tying his shoelaces, something she had secretly taught the boy over the past 3 months. "Are you stupid, Tommy?" "It's simple," Richard barked, while the child covered his ears and sobbed. Kesha's heart broke, but her mind sharpened. Quietly, she took out her phone and began recording. Every insult, every scream, every moment of neglect. She captured it all. Richard, so sure of his power, had no idea that the woman he dismissed as just a cleaner had powerful allies and now carried a weapon he could never control: the truth. If you think this story already feels intense, stay tuned, because what Kesha was planning in secret would soon turn Richard Blackwood's carefully built reputation into ashes. 3 days later, Richard gathered all 5 women who worked in his mansion. He circled them like a predator, stopping right in front of Kesha. "Listen carefully. Cooks cook, nannies look after children, cleaners clean. If anyone here steps out of line, there will be consequences." He singled her out, announced that her pay would be cut in half for playing doctor, and that she would work extra weekends for free. As if that wasn't enough, he had security cameras installed in every room. "And if anyone dares to teach my son anything without my permission," Richard sneered, "you won't just lose your job, you'll lose much more." The other women dropped their eyes in fear. Kesha said nothing, but inside her heart grew cold and firm. Richard thought he had broken her. He had no idea that she had already lost everything before and survived. Not long ago, she had owned one of the most respected therapy centers for autistic children, with hospital partnerships and a waiting list 6 months long. Her methods were groundbreaking, her results astonishing, but jealousy had turned into cruelty. Led by Dr. Jonathan Mills, a circle of white therapists launched false lawsuits, bribed inspectors, and invented fake complaints to destroy her career. 18 months of legal battles drained her savings, cost her home, and almost broke her spirit. When she finally cleared her name, it was too late. Her clinic was gone, her reputation shattered, and no hospital dared to hire her again. And now she was here, treated as nothing more than a maid, while the man who insulted her had no idea she was preparing his downfall. Kesha had no choice but to take cleaning jobs to pay her lawyer's bills and care for her sick mother with diabetes. But what her enemies never guessed was that she still held powerful cards, hidden documents, secret recordings, and most importantly, a wide network of allies. Among them were journalists, civil rights leaders, and grateful parents whose children she had once helped. That afternoon, while scrubbing Richard's bathroom, her phone buzzed with a message that made her heart race. It was from Marcus Chun, an investigative reporter who had followed her case years ago. "Kesha, I got access to the files you mentioned. Dr. Mills is being investigated by the FBI for medical fraud. We need to talk urgently about your evidence. That evening, as Richard shouted at Tommy for struggling in the bath, Kesha adjusted the small camera she had planted in the playroom. She already had 47 clips of neglect and psychological abuse. But what chilled her most was hearing Richard on the phone with his wife. That woman is getting too close to Tommy. I'll have to get rid of her soon. A black woman like that could give him the wrong ideas. That was the final proof. Richard wasn't just careless. He was openly racist and cruel. He planned to fire her before she could finish her mission. Kesha smiled bitterly as she saved the audio. Richard Blackwood had underestimated a woman who had already faced down a conspiracy far more dangerous than him. Every insult, every threat, every sneer was being captured by someone who knew exactly how to turn evidence into justice. 3 weeks later, she finally met Marcus in a quiet cafe downtown. He pushed a thick folder across the table. Kesha, this will interest you. The FBI is after Dr. Mills, but what I found on Richard Blackwood is explosive. Inside were documents showing Richard wasn't just an investor in her rival clinic. He had actually bankrolled the entire smear campaign against her. He paid lawyers to invent false claims, bribed inspectors, and fueled the lawsuits that destroyed her. In private emails, he wrote that he wouldn't allow a black woman to dominate the elite therapy market. But there was worse. Richard plans to open a chain of child therapy clinics using your very methods, Marcus revealed. He stole your work, documented it, and thought you'd never prove it. Kesha felt fury and satisfaction mix in her chest. At last, she had the missing piece of the puzzle. But Marcus's next words made her freeze. Richard is being considered for a seat on the National Council for Child Health. If that happens, he could shape policy for autistic children nationwide. Back at the mansion, Richard's cruelty deepened. He mocked Kesha in front of the staff, timing her work, criticizing every detail. Worst of all, he used Tommy as a weapon. Tell Kesha people like her don't understand special kids like you. Richard ordered a dinner. Confused and ashamed, Tommy repeated the cruel words, then whispered, "I'm sorry," when his father wasn't looking. Kesha captured everything. Richard's commands, Tommy's tears, the emotional damage carved into Boy's face. The evidence was piling higher by the day. The turning point came during her routine cleaning in Richard's home office. There she found confidential contracts exposing his financial gains. He was using insider information about autism diagnoses to manipulate pharmaceutical stocks, betting against affordable treatments, so families would continue to suffer. With a pen-shaped camera, Kesha snapped photo after photo of the incriminating files. But the deadliest discovery came from a recorded call. Richard was heard telling his lawyer, "Burn everything tied to the black woman. If her name shows up in our files, erase it like she never existed." That night, Kesha phoned Marcus. Her voice was steady but fierce. "Do you want the story of the century? I have the evidence to bring down not just Richard Blackwood, but the entire network of medical corruption you've been chasing for years." "What kind of evidence?" Marcus asked, already sensing something huge was about to be revealed. Kesha leaned in, her voice steady. Recordings of Richard admitting his crimes. Documents showing he used confidential medical information to play the stock market. Racist emails ordering the destruction of my career. And best of all, she allowed herself a rare smile. Videos proving he emotionally abuses his own autistic son. The same man who profits from children's pain can't even care for his own child. Marcus fell silent, stunned. "Kesha, this is dynamite. When do you want it released?" "Next week," she answered firmly. "At the charity gala for autistic children, the night Richard receives the Exemplary Father of the Year award. Let's turn his moment of pride into his worst humiliation." The plan was set in motion. While Richard slept soundly in his mansion, convinced of his untouchable power, Kesha worked late into the night. Every insult, every act of racism, every moment of cruelty toward Tommy was carefully organized into evidence that would soon explode in public. The man who mocked her as just a cleaner was about to discover how dangerous it is to underestimate the wrong woman. The Beverly Hills Hotel glittered with wealth and prestige on gala night. Doctors, businessmen, politicians, all were gathered to honor Richard Blackwood. Dressed sharply in his tuxedo, Richard smiled for the cameras, confident he was about to be celebrated. "Ladies and gentlemen," the presenter announced, "before the award, Channel 12 News has prepared a special film on the importance of parental care for autistic children." Richard sat back smugly, expecting praise. But as the lights dimmed and the screen flickered to life, his heart froze. Marcus Chun's voice filled the hall. "This investigation reveals how a circle of medical corruption destroyed honest professionals for profit. But first, let's see how one of its leaders treats his own autistic son." Gasps echoed as the first video showed Richard screaming at Tommy, "Are you stupid or deaf? Stop crying like a baby. Normal kids don't act like that." The boy sobbed helplessly while his father raged. Shock spread through the crowd. Richard jumped up, but Dr. Mills beside him hissed, "Sit down. Don't make this worse." But it did get worse. The screen rolled on, showing Richard's racist emails. Erase everything about the black woman. Delete her like she never existed. Richard's eyes darted to the front row, and there sat Kesha, elegant and calm, watching justice unfold. "Dear God," he whispered, sweat dripping down his face. The documentary continued with damning evidence. Internal emails, bribe records, payments to corrupt inspectors. Dr. Mills tried to slip away, but Marcus appeared on stage. "Dr. Jonathan Mills, please stay seated. The FBI has questions for you." Federal agents stepped forward, blocking every exit. The trap had closed. The mayor, visibly shaken, took the microphone. "In 20 years of public service, I have never seen such cruelty and hypocrisy. Mr. Blackwood, the award you were meant to receive will instead go to the true victim of your crimes." The crowd erupted in applause as Kesha walked on stage. She stood tall, holding her diploma high. "My name is Kesha Williams. I am an occupational therapist with 15 years of experience helping autistic children. 2 years ago, this man destroyed my clinic because he could not stand to see a black woman succeed. He called me a maid, but I was secretly helping his son make progress he never noticed." The audience gasped again as videos of Tommy appeared, walking more steadily, speaking new words, even smiling. All milestones achieved under Kesha's quiet guidance, while Richard dismissed her as nothing. "This is a setup." Richard shouted desperately, but Marcus cut him off. "We have 47 videos of you abusing your son, dozens of recordings of your crimes, racist emails, bank documents proving fraud and stock manipulation, all gathered in your own home." The FBI agents moved in. "Richard Blackwood, you are under arrest for fraud, bribery, market manipulation, and conspiracy," Special Agent Rodriguez declared. Richard's protests filled the air. "You don't understand. I fund half the hospitals in this city." "That's exactly why this arrest matters," Rodriguez replied coldly, snapping handcuffs on his wrists. As the disgraced millionaire was dragged out in front of 400 stunned elites, the hall rose to its feet in thunderous applause. For Kesha, "I didn't do this for revenge," she said into the microphone, her voice calm but powerful. "I did it for every family he hurt, for every child denied proper care because he destroyed good therapists, and especially for Tommy, who deserves a father's love, not shame." The last thing Richard saw before vanishing into police custody was Kesha Williams standing tall, receiving a standing ovation from the very medical elite that had once rejected her. The man who took pleasure in humiliating just a cleaning lady finally learned the truth. He had underestimated the wrong woman. Kesha wasn't just someone who survived. She was a fighter who turned every insult and cruel act into strength, using it to deliver justice that could not be ignored. As the heavy doors closed behind Richard, one question lingered in the air. Could a man who had always bought his way out of trouble finally face the punishment for a life built on cruelty and stolen privilege? 6 months after the night that ended Richard Blackwood's reign, Kesha Williams stood exactly where she belonged, at the top of her medical career. The brand-new Dr. Kesha Williams Child Therapy Center now filled a 4-story building in the heart of the city. It was funded by ethical investors, grateful families, and, with a touch of irony, Richard's own fortune seized during his trial. Dr. Williams, we already have an 8-month waiting list, reported her assistant, Jennifer, a young woman once fired from Richard's clinic for refusing to fake medical reports. And 3 more states want us to open centers there. Kesha smiled as she looked out the office window at children playing in the therapy garden. Among them was 9-year-old Tommy Blackwood. Now living under the care of his Aunt Martha after his father's arrest, Tommy visited 3 times a week, free from Richard's harsh words and pressure. He had blossomed like a flower finally touched by sunlight. He spoke clearly, looked people in the eye, no longer banged his head on walls. And most importantly, he smiled every single day. Aunt Martha, can I show Dr. Kesha my drawing? Tommy asked, running down the hall with a coordination Richard once claimed was impossible. Martha, a gentle 50-year-old woman who had always disapproved of her brother's cruelty, wiped tears from her eyes. Kesha, I don't know how to thank you. In 6 months, Tommy has made more progress than in 8 years of expensive treatments Richard forced on him. Meanwhile, Richard Blackwood sat in a federal prison, serving 12 years for medical fraud, market manipulation, and child abuse. His companies were dissolved, his fortune gone, and his reputation so destroyed that no lawyer would touch his appeal. His partner in crime, Dr. Jonathan Mills, had lost his license and now worked as a call center agent, drowning under the weight of $1 million fines from the FBI. Their corrupt empire collapsed, leading to the arrest of 17 medical professionals and investigations in 5 more states. Journalist Marcus Chun even won the Pulitzer Prize for exposing the scandal, praising Kesha's transformation from victim to warrior. True revenge, he wrote, is not destroying your enemy. It's building something so powerful that their evil no longer matters. Yet, what touched Kesha most were not awards or headlines. It was the letters she received every day. Families thanked her for helping children finally get real, respectful care. Mothers wept with joy as their children made progress. Fathers learned how to love their kids for who they truly were. One afternoon, Tommy interrupted an important meeting. Dr. Kesha, can I ask you something? Of course, sweetheart, she said warmly. Why did my daddy like me the way I am? Kesha knelt down to his level, speaking gently. Your daddy was sick, Tommy, not in his body, but in his heart. He couldn't love people who were different from him, but that was his weakness, not yours. Soon after, Harvard University called, offering Kesha a professorship and a research lab with unlimited funding to develop new treatments. Dr. Williams, the dean, said, your story has inspired a generation. We want you to train the therapists of the future. But the most emotional call came from Martha Blackwood herself. Kesha, I need to tell you something. Richard admitted during my last visit that you were the best therapist Tommy ever had. He knew it from the beginning, but his pride and prejudice were stronger than his love for his own son. And what did you say? Kesha asked softly. I told him it was too late for regrets. But thanks to you, Tommy now has a happiness Richard never gave him. Weeks later, at the grand opening of her 5th clinic, the mayor announced a surprise. The street of her main center would now be called Dr. Kesha Williams Avenue, honoring a woman who turned pain into hope and revenge into healing. During her speech, Kesha looked at the crowd. Doctors who once doubted her, families she helped, journalists who told her story, and little Tommy, clapping proudly in the front row. 2 years ago, Kesha began, a man tried to destroy me because he couldn't stand to see a black woman succeed in his world. He used money, power, and privilege to erase me. But he made one mistake. He underestimated me. Every day I spent working under him. I wasn't just surviving. I was learning, documenting, preparing. My goal wasn't revenge. It was to prove that no amount of privilege can defeat talent and perseverance. The room erupted in applause. Tommy stood and shouted, Dr. Kesha saved me. She taught me how to speak, how to walk, and how to love myself. The audience roared with pride. Kesha wiped her tears. The best revenge, she continued, isn't destroying those who hurt you. It's building something greater, something so strong their cruelty no longer matters. It's proving you were always more than they believed, and far more than they could ever be. That night, as Kesha reviewed expansion plans for clinics overseas, her phone buzzed with a message from Tommy. Dr. Kesha, thank you for teaching me that being different means being special. When I grow up, I want to help kids the way you helped me. Kesha smiled. Her greatest victory wasn't Richard's downfall or her success. It was this, a once broken child now full of hope, joy, and the dream of helping others. Richard Blackwood tried to bury her, but he forgot one thing. Seeds buried in the ground don't die. They grow, they spread, and they become forests. If this story touched your heart, subscribe for more stories that prove real strength isn't in money or power, but in turning pain into purpose and injustice into inspiration.